Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Deku D.O. This will be Part 8, Chapter 9, entitled Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Aizawa hefted a small sigh as he rubbed his temple. Whatever he'd been hit with the night before, he thinks someone had said something about toad venom, had left him with the world's worst hangover. Of course, if he was able to teach in a full body cast after the USJ, then a headache wouldn't be too much of a hardship. So here he was, wrapped in his sleeping bag on the floor of Class 1A, tinted goggles pulled over his eyes to block out the sun. Groaning, Aizawa pulled himself up from the floor. "Sensei, are you feeling okay? You seem a little off today," Yayorozu asked worriedly upon seeing her sensei's pinched face. "You do seem even paler than usual," Uraraka tapped her chin. "Aizawa-sensei, you must take care of your health. It is of the utmost importance for a hero," Ida chopped. Aizawa's lips tugged down. Usually his problem child would have added something to the conversation. Instead, Midoriya looked almost despondent in his chair as he pointedly didn't look at his sensei. A flash of green passed behind Aizawa's eyes. "I brought you some orange juice." But that hadn't been his problem child, but the green-haired doctor at the clinic. "Problem child." Aizawa sat up with a gasp. "Sho, I'm so glad you're awake," his husband had responded with joy. "Where's Midoriya?" "What are you talking about?" "The problem child was here." "Oh, you must mean the doctor." A kind-looking nurse with cropped brown hair and kangaroo legs entered the room. "It's after shift change, so he's already gone home. I know he looks young, but I doubt he'd appreciate being called a child." "But he's still a student. He's in the hero course at UA." "You must be mistaken." The nurse shook her head. "The doctor who took care of you was quirkless." "Maybe they just looked alike, Sho." Yamada ran his fingers through Aizawa's hair. "From my understanding, you were fairly intoxicated." Aizawa blinked. "Wait, I don't... Where am I?" Sensei, do you need us to call Recovery Girl?" Aizawa was abruptly shaken out of his thoughts. "Apologies, I was just lost in thought. I'm fine. Anyways, listen up, 1A. Today's our last day of training before the provisional exams tomorrow. We're only going to do half a day so that you all have time for rest for the test. However, before we head to the gym, we are going to have a special joint homeroom class with 1B. It has been brought to my attention that certain elements of your education may have been lacking. We will be rectifying this today." "But Sensei, we cannot all fit in one classroom," Ida interrupted. "I was just getting to that. Girls, you will be heading to 1B. Boys should stay here. You have 2 minutes." There was a sudden scrambling. Shortly after all the girls had rushed out the door, the 1B boys filed into the classroom. "Ugh, why must we share classes with that detestable 1A?" Monoma groaned as he entered the room. "Hey, we can hear you, you know," Kirishima shouted back. "Quiet." Aizawa clutched his head in pain. "It is illogical to squabble. Now, your teacher for this lesson should be here any moment. I'm going to take a nap." Aizawa made to leave the room. As he did, All Might walked in. "I am here to teach you sex ed." "What?" Aizawa smirked and slipped out of the classroom. "Sho!" Yamada greeted, looking up from his grating as Aizawa entered the staff room. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine. Just going to take a nap," Aizawa answered, lying down on the sofa with his head in his husband's lap. "Good idea," Yamada agreed, resting his hand on Aizawa's head and idly running his fingers through his husband's tangled hair. Aizawa hummed contentedly as he drifted off to sleep. "You're at the Musutafu Community Health Center. My name is Obi Kozui, and I'm the head nurse on shift. It seems as if you had a nasty run-in with a toad venom quirk while on patrol last night." Aizawa took a minute to look around at his surroundings. It did look like a hospital room, but... "This place seems run down for a health center." "Sho!" Yamada scolded. "It's all right," Obi-san smiled. "It is run down, but it can't be helped. You see, this health center treats those who cannot access treatment elsewhere. As a result, we don't have much in the way of funding. The person who brought you in assumed that you were quirkless from your fight, and so brought you to us." "I don't understand." Aizawa frowned. "Don't you? You're an underground hero, right? I'm surprised you don't already know. In today's society, there are certain groups of people who cannot access medical care. The quirkless, people with certain mutation quirks, those with villainous quirks, and others who, for one reason or another, may not have access to treatment. The purpose of this clinic is to treat these people. I say clinic, but we actually function more like a hospital." "But why can't they go to an actual hospital?" Did you know that Musutafa General has a blanket policy of refusing treatment to quirkless patients, even in emergency situations? They what? Aizawa growled. They claim it's because they don't have the training to handle quirkless bodies, and so it's a liability issue. But the reality is they just don't want to waste precious resources on people who they consider to have no value or future. That's horrible, Yamada cried. That's life, Obi replied primly. It's also why this clinic exists. We treat every patient equally, no matter who they may be or where they come from. We are a safe space for them to go when they are weak and vulnerable. As such, I ask that you do not tell others of this clinic. Even other heroes. Especially other heroes. We treat and serve as a safe haven for anyone who asks. The people who come here have had hard lives, and many are not looked favorably upon by the law. You treat villains, Aizawa said darkly. We treat people, Obi countered. Medical care is a basic human right, no matter who you are and what you may have done. The vast majority of our patients have done nothing illegal, and we see a fair few more vigilantes than villains. But we turn no one away. It only works so long as everyone who comes here is both welcome and safe. And no hero has ever found out about this. Of course they have, Obi scoffed. Recovery Girl was here to observe one of the doctors only a few days ago. They simply have kept that knowledge to themselves because they know that what we do is more good than harm. Wait, Chiyo-sensei was? Yamada blinked. Feel free to ask her yourself. Anyways, I need to do a physical if you want to be discharged. Can you touch your nose with your finger for me? Sho, wake up. Aizawa blinked sleepily. Huh? Homeroom is more than halfway over, and you mentioned you wanted to stop by Chiyo-sensei's office before going to the TDL. Right. Thanks, Zashi. Aizawa pulled himself up. Huh. I wonder how the brats are handling their surprise lesson. A better question may be how Yagi-san is handling it. Aizawa's sweat dropped. You may be right about that one. I am here to teach you sex ed. Izuku blinked in shock as his classmates cried out. He knows he was the one to suggest this, and he's glad the boys don't have to deal with Midnight Sensei really, but Yagi? There's no way this was going to go well. Sex ed? Kaminari gaped. Yes. Today, Zygotes, we will learn about the reproductive system and, Yagi blushed a deep crimson. The, appropriate way to protect yourselves as you... that is... Izuku face-palmed. This was already a disaster. I see. Shoto responded in his usual monotone. If this is about where babies come from, I am not needed this lesson. I learned this from my brother last week. An awkward silence fell over the class. Izuku slammed his head against his desk. He loved his friend. Dearly, but why did Shoto have to be so awkward? And this was coming from the king of awkward. The second-hand embarrassment was killing him. Right, All Might coughed harshly. Where babies come from, it's certainly part of it, but there is more. Sensei, why exactly are we having this class? I mean, we're all in high school. Shouldn't we know all of this stuff already? Sero asked. Just because you know this stuff doesn't mean everyone here does, Izuku interrupted irritably. Something which should be clear given the last few minutes. Exactly, Midoriya Shonen. All Might spat out a spray of blood. And now that everyone is living in the dorms together, the principal decided it was better to be safe than sorry. Now, does anyone have any more questions before we begin? Are we going to get to see pictures? What exactly will we be covering in this class? Are we only going to talk about straight relationships, or are we covering gay relationships too? Are the girls doing this too? Do I have to? Do you have any kinks, All Might Sensei? And the awkward silence was back, along with All Might's blush. Now, to answer your questions one at a time. Yes, Mineta Shonen, I have prepared a wonderful diagram of the male anatomy. Izuku almost snickered at Mineta's disappointed face. I have a syllabus which I will be handing out in just a moment. We will be talking about both heterosexual and homosexual relationships. Yes, the girls are with Midnight and 1B. Yes, you have to. Now let's begin. All Might was not at all subtle in dodging that last question. All right, this is going to be so manly, Kirishima cheered. Everyone turned to stare at him. What? Ida Shonen, if you wouldn't mind passing out the syllabus. Of course, All Might Sensei, Ida agreed, jumping to his feet. Great, thank you. Now we will begin with a basic overview of the male anatomy. As you can see in the attached diagram, the major parts of the male reproductive system consist of the testes, scrotum, spermatic ducts, male accessory glands, and the penis. Izuku let All Might's lecture fall into the background noise as he discreetly pulled his phone out from under his desk. Guys, All Might is trying to teach sex ed right now. You brought this upon yourself, my dude. Could be worse, at least it's not midnight. Honestly, midnight may have been better. All Might is so awkward. I'm going to die from secondhand embarrassment. Hound Dog may find he has some new patients. I'm so glad that's not my job. No, you get to deal with me. So mean. What's sex ed? Shit. JK, I can't believe you guys fell for that. I'm a nurse. Of course I know what sex is. You're a demon is what you are. Midoriya Shonen. Izuku's head shot up. Yes, All Might Sensei. I'm sure that whatever's on your phone is very important. However, I do ask that you give me your full attention. Izuku blushed scarlet. Sorry, Sensei. Not to worry, my boy. We're all a little uncomfortable here. Ha! All Might boomed with an awkward laugh. Now, where was I? You were about to demonstrate the proper way to put on a condom, sir, Ida replied as formally as ever. Joy, Monoma groaned. Ah, yes. May I present my trusty banana? All Might whipped a suspiciously phallic-looking banana from thin air. Izuku slapped his face into the palms of his hands. Could this get any more embarrassing? He shouldn't have asked. Yes, lube can come in many varieties and is essential for your partner's comfort. Some of it is even flavored. Me, well, I have always been partial to strawberry. BDSM? Perhaps that topic is a little advanced for today's lesson. Well, if you insist, I did have this friend in the U.S. who... While you may find it, pleasurable, I must caution you about quirk use in the bedroom. Why, once when I was around your age, or maybe just a little bit older. Izuku went back to his group chat. I have heard things that can never be unheard. Spill the tea. Strawberry has been ruined for me forever. But you are a strawberry. Oh, God. Guys, he's handing out condoms and bananas. Sucks to be you. So cliché. Bets on how many kids are secretly making condom balloons? My psychiatrist senses are tingling. This should be good. Based on how you're currently projecting onto Izuku's classmates, it's fair to say you made a fair few condom balloons yourself in your youth. The way you phrased it implies that you consider condom balloons to be an agitator of authority. This leads me to believe that as a child you regularly played with condoms in an attempt to gain your father's attention by making him angry. Low blow. Played with condoms. You make him sound like a child deviant. Obviously, he was a child deviant. Like you can talk, you literally spend your nights doing illegal shit. Yo, Mito, you still there? I am suddenly very grateful that I suggested this class to Aizawa-sensei. That is not how to put on a condom. You know what? I don't even want to know. I do. I heard you had a rather interesting shift last night. Recovery Girl greeted as Aizawa slunk into her office. Pardon? The clinic staff did inform you that I'm in the know, right? Recovery Girl spun around in her chair. It was such a wonderful surprise to get that video from Umeda-chan. Video? Mm-hmm. You just say the darndest things under the influence of drugs. Aizawa paled. It really was thoughtful of that girl. Now I have the perfect tool to make you rest when you're injured or ill. That's blackmail. Pish posh, it's merely a mild disincentive. And people forget you and the rat are friends. Do they? I can't imagine why. Nezu-san is a delightful partner for tea. You would say that. Anyways, it would be illogical to continue this conversation. I have to return to my class shortly. What can I do for you then? What's the deal with this clinic? Is it legit? I assume they gave you the spiel. Aizawa nodded shortly. Right. Well, I suppose that depends on what you mean by legit, as you say. Are they legal? Not really, no. Most of them are not licensed to practice medicine. The Recovery Girl held up her hand, silencing Aizawa's interruption. However, they do good, ethical work. I've personally supervised a shift there and am training one of their trauma surgeons in my spare time. They give better medical care than most hospitals and with less than half of the resources. I don't understand, Aizawa growled. They treat villains. That's what you're caught up on, Recovery Girl scoffed. Medical care is a human right. I'm sure they told you the same thing. They'd be piss-poor doctors if they didn't care for anyone and everyone who walks through their doors. Even if I were to accept your premise that they are somehow perpetrating harm by treating villains, for every villain they treat 100 more innocent people. People who, I may remind you, are completely unable to access traditional medical care. Still. Shota, imagine you're on a patrol and you find a bleeding quirkless child in the street. Let's say he has an open fracture. His injuries are far too severe for you to treat yourself. What do? Take him to a hospital. Aizawa replied immediately before pausing. Oh, Yes. Oh, without the clinic, that child has no chance, nor does the shop clerk with a scary mutation quirk, or the illegal immigrant couple with a sick newborn. They even have a pay-what-you-can system in place for those who can't get health insurance. The only reason the clinic is illegal is because we made it so they had to be. Do I wish they were all actually licensed doctors and nurses? Of course I do. But I also recognize that they are in an impossible situation and have managed to create something incredible. Something that saves lives. To stop them would be a far greater evil. I understand, Aizawa sighed. If their medical practice is as good as you say, even though they're not licensed, I'll let it go. I'll keep their secret. I'll make sure Hizashi does too. Thank you, Shota. Recovery Girl smiled warmly. Now here, have some gummies for the hangover I'm sure you're nursing. Thanks, Chiyo-sensei. Aizawa gratefully accepted the handful of sweets. Even without the hangover, he would never turn down Chiyo-sensei's gummies. Though none of his students would ever guess it, Aizawa had a massive sweet tooth. Of course, dearie. Recovery Girl turned back around. Now off with you. I don't want to see you hanging around in my infirmary any more than absolutely necessary. Yeah. Aizawa stuffed his hands into his pockets and slunk out of the room. He had brats to wrangle. Idly, he wondered how traumatized his students would be when he saw them next. After all might and sex ed were perhaps the two most awkward things Aizawa had witnessed in his life, and he had once been a middle schooler. It really was the perfect opportunity to torture both his students and most knowing co-worker. Aizawa giggled, oblivious to 3 nearby students staring at him in abject horror. Maybe today wasn't so bad after all. Meanwhile, with the girls in Class 1B. All right, girls, Midnight cracked her whip. Listen up. Yes, Sensei. Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant. Midnight paused dramatically. And die. Sensei? Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise? Okay, now everybody take some rubbers. Now at your age, you're going to be having a lot of urges. You're going to want to take off your clothes and touch each other, but if you do touch each other, you will get chlamydia and die. Is Sensei just quoting pre-quirk era movies? Yes. Yes, she is. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 9 of Deku D.O. Chapter 10 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one. This was so hard to record, even for a second time, because it just cracks me up nonstop. I'm eager to hear your thoughts and reactions as well, though. And as always, thank you so much for listening.